Posit. Where is the last place you'd want to encounter socialist indoctrination? In what profession would pushing an anti-capitalist agenda be the most despicable?
Doing this requires folks to sort of sacrifice their own selves and their own nervous system on the altar of capitalism, and this is not at all the work that I think clinicians should be doing.
Yeah! How about therapy?
Therapy as a field is inherently steeped in the medical model. While we try to distance ourselves from it, the reality is that it is a byproduct of the medical system, which, especially in America, is obviously inextricably linked with a capitalist ideal.
So it's inextricably linked with people peacefully interacting without anyone forcibly intervening? I should hope so!
There is a lot to be said about how the medical model negatively affects therapy.
Does it though? Or does it just affect your agenda?
But the thing that I wanted to point out today is something that's mentioned in this article, Does Psychotherapy Reproduce or Disrupt Neoliberal Capitalism? Which is that when we view therapy from the medical model, where we see anxiety, depression, fear, trauma, whatever, as a problem, it becomes a tool of neoliberal capitalism. Essentially, this reinforces the idea that when a person comes to therapy to work on whatever it is that's creating distress in their life, our job as the therapist is to fix it so that they can go and be a more productive member of society, make more money, be a better worker, do all of the things that capitalism tells us we're supposed to be doing.
Sounds good to me, so what's the problem?
This fucking sucks.
What? Why would that suck? You want people to be happier, healthier, more productive members of society. You want them to be able to live their lives, function well enough to do their jobs, and have a happy home life. What the hell's so wrong about that?
It's important to acknowledge that the field, like the bones of the thing, are inherently linked and like inextricably so with sexism, racism, capitalism.
Oh, of course. Silly me.
Because all of the research that holds up our field and all of the like figureheads in our field were white men who, like, most of them were racist. All of them were pretty much sexist.
Wait. You're complaining about the race and gender of the early researchers in psychology, but it's other people who are racist and sexist?
And so, even though it's not explicitly stated this way, like very few of us probably were actually in college being taught, like, now you go make better workers for the capitalist machine. Like, no one says that, but it's like an implied meaning.
Translated, it's your own delusion because you're a socialist whack job and you see everything through that lens. This reminds me of the people who claim that public schools are about making mindless workers for the capitalist machine, even though the system was explicitly created by socialists for the purpose of socialist indoctrination.
Right? We view mental illness typically in like the therapy world as a barrier to people living their best lives. And when we say best lives, what we mean is productive lives, lives where you're working a regular job, lives where you're making money.
And doing all the other things you want to do. Hobbies, relationships, leisure activities, all sorts of things. It's all one and the same. It's about the empowerment of the individual. But as we'll see, that's the last thing this horrible woman wants.
Lives where you're meeting these milestones that have been prescribed to us. These look a variety of different ways. Sometimes it's like the love, marriage, baby carriage thing.
Yeah, falling in love and having a family. How horrible.
The reason that this fucking sucks is because capitalism is an inherently oppressive regime to live under.
Yeah, that's why people are building rickety little boats and risking their lives to leave capitalist countries to go to countries run by socialists. Oh, wait a minute! It's the other way around! Dimwit.
Not only is it sexist and racist and ableist and just like generally fucked up.
Yeah, just keep saying it over and over again without any support whatsoever. That'll make it true eventually.
But it also steals our ability to feel a sense of autonomy. This is something that's spoken about heavily in the research. All of this is linked in the description, by the way.
It is not linked anywhere in her description. She is lying. She's got a bunch of shout-outs, her Patreon, merch, other links, tons of abortion and BLM links, links to other therapists, and the music. She never linked to the sources. I did, by the way. I tracked them down and they're linked in my description. One of us isn't hiding things. Anyway, her first source, the Medium article, doesn't even mention autonomy. The other one, the Mad in America article, views autonomy as a bad thing. They're complaining that therapy techniques put it on the individual to change their own lives for the better. But that's called empowerment. But that's not what they mean. They want their patients to feel like they're helpless victims of the racist patriarchy, and they need socialism to ride in on a white horse and save them. This is exactly the opposite of what therapy is supposed to be. Don't believe me? Here's how the Medium article concludes. Therapy is often necessary and helpful in treating the symptoms of capitalism. While it is not inherently anti-capitalist, this should not prevent or discourage people who need mental health services from getting them. Nevertheless, while therapy and mental health services give people the tools to better function within a society that oppresses them, it does not currently give them the tools to overthrow said society or even identify its deeply intertwined ills. Therapy in a capitalist society inevitably directs people toward functioning comfortably within the society's bounds. Instead of denying therapy's value, its aims should instead be repurposed to not only improve an individual's mental health, but discourage reconciliation with capitalism, demonstrate the failures of society in order to encourage an anti-capitalist view, and increase the political consciousness and efficacy of clients. However, capitalism still devours everything in its wake, often rendering therapy a mere survival tool, a watered-down version of true understanding, and a stumbling block in the way of revolutionary thought and action. And I'll just quickly point out that I've shown in the past that the happiness index directly correlates with how capitalist a country is. If you want happy people, go capitalist. But your happiness is completely irrelevant to these people.
But one of the defining features that we see of mental illness that occurs in late stage capitalism is this feeling of helplessness and hopelessness. Because for better or for worse, in order for us to continue functioning and continue living, we need fucking money to survive. We can't escape working in a capitalist world.
And we've got the old work or starve crap. Tell me, in what society could people not work? Work is going to be necessary as long as we live in a universe governed by the second law of thermodynamics. If you're oppressed by anything, it's physics.
So when we talk about therapy existing in this world of like, we want to prioritize your ability to be productive, be a better worker, it sucks out the joy and the feeling of empowerment that typically we're seeking to do in therapy.
Sounds like you're the one sucking the joy out of things. Some people actually like their work, you know, and even if people who don't, most of them nevertheless can come home after a hard day's work and enjoy the fruits of their labor. And here you are trying to deny them that.
You and I as individuals cannot single-handedly overthrow this oppressive regime. However, we can center our work together as a team to not be about how productive you are, how efficient you are, how much money you're making, but rather about reclaiming your time, your attention, your love, your care, and your existence in this world to be for you, to be for your community, to be for your family, to be for the relationships that are filling your cup, and to continue to ask ourselves how we can unlearn these values that we've been ascribed.
Did she just admit directly that she's indoctrinating her patients against capitalism? I mean, it's kind of clear that's what she's been doing, but I expected her to at least try to hide it.
If you're a clinician, I'm sure you're familiar. A lot of the work that we're doing in trauma is helping folks unlearn these beliefs that we have about the world. And so this is really not that different from the work that we're probably doing with folks who like have survived childhood abuse or have survived dysfunctional or abusive relationships.
And did she just compare capitalism to child abuse? The most telling thing is that throughout the video, including a lot of parts I cut out, she defines people by their relationship to the community or the family or whatever. Not once does she even acknowledge them as unique individuals.
Even further, we optimistically argue that if therapists as a collective were committed to diversifying discursive possibilities for understanding and action in therapy, over time it might be possible to subtly undermine neoliberal governmentality, likely without subverting it entirely.
So she's just using therapy to push her socialist agenda. Don't believe me?
Is more healing than viewing our work that we're doing on our mental illness to benefit someone else, but also is inherently an act of social and political rebellion.
See? And for those of you who are playing the drinking game,
yes, capitalism will continue to capitalism, and that will fucking suck, especially because there are racist and sexist and ableist and classist undertones to that affect especially marginalized communities to an exponential degree.
Seriously, ask yourself if this is the kind of therapist you should be going to. One who puts her own political objectives over her patient's individual needs.
Instead of denying therapy's value, its aims should instead be repurposed to not only improve an individual's mental health, but to discourage reconciliation with capitalism, demonstrate the failures of society in order to encourage an anti-capitalist view, and increase the political consciousness and efficacy of clients. This, again, is like sort of the essence of what I'm talking about.
This woman needs to have her license and certifications ripped out from under her and never allowed anywhere near the field again. And if you or anyone you know lives in Tucson, Arizona, tell them no matter what, never, ever, ever go to Mickey Atkins for therapy, because you won't get any. Just someone abusing her patients to push her agenda. So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.